Good. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Lockdown Live interview with Chris Buck. Thank you for joining us. Oh, Jonathan, thank you. Live and sounds good. Well, I thank God for that. That's the first hurdle. Um, so, what we're going to do over the next hour or so, whatever time we do, we're just going to have a chat with Chris. He's going to have a bit of a noodle and we're just going to ask him some of those in-depth questions that normally get edited out of Guitar Magazine interviews.
Yeah.
But we're going to try and get to the. Oh, Hans Mink is watching. Well,
Hans, how's it going?
Hans is in the house. That's good. Um, oh, actually, Johannes says we are all at home. Clothes are only optional for are only not optional for us. Okay, fine, fair enough. I get that. I get that. Mike Goodman's in the house. Hi, Mike. How are you? Okay, so Chris, hello.
Hello.
Where,
Hello, as you were saying just off camera. Hello.
hello. So where are you?
I'm at home, funnily enough.
Yeah, and where is that?
South Wales, in case
Somewhere.
couldn't place it from the accent.
Yeah. Anywhere
Yeah,
in particular, or just generally in a house?
it's generally in a house. Yeah, it's been a long couple of weeks. I was all right, to be honest, up until about a week ago. I think it started to get to me a little bit now, the sort of the inability to actually go anywhere. But
Okay.
yeah, not to
You've
start on a
got-
miserable note.
yeah. Well, that's okay. But I mean, you've got some half decent landscape around you.
Oh, there's worse places to be, absolutely. If the problem is wherever you want to go, you either need to start by walking up a hill, or you know you will end by walking up a hill, um, which sort of yeah, invariably stands between the impetus to actually get off your ass and do anything.
Okay, right. The reason we're here is so I can ask you some incisive questions, and hopefully we'll delve down deep into some of the answers around that. First things first. Oh, hello. We've got David. Hi, David. David says awesome guitarist. Can't wait to see him again. That's
Oh,
nice.
awesome! Thank you, David.
Hans in from North Germany. Geraint, a lovely, laid-back and humble man, considering his ability. I think he's talking about you. And Paul Edwards, that'll be my brother. He's watching. Oh, hello, Paul. Hello. Okay, so I want to start with the latest thing that you've done.
Mm.
Obviously, a lot of guys watching, a lot of people who are watching may not know, but they should check it out. Is that you've been doing the Friday Fretworks now on YouTube for how long?
Do you know what? I was thinking about this the other day. I think it's about a year and a half, but I would have to double check. Feels like an eternity, to be honest. Some weeks anyway, but yeah, in and around a year and a half, I guess.
Okay, and it's proven to be, although you can be, you can say what you like, but as far as I can tell, it's proven to be pretty darn successful.
Yeah, it keeps me busy. Something to do every week. It's again, it kind of goes back to the conversation we were having off camera before we started. The main sort of not difficulty so much as just a kind of obstacle, I guess, with something like Friday Fretworks or any weekly, talk to the guys from that pedal show, talk to anyone who does a regular thing, is finding the kind of impetus or just the energy or the kind of creativity to get up and do something new every week. Invariably it takes between a day and a half, 2 days for a particularly long one to shoot any one video, which, given it's invariably condensed down to about 10 minutes, is ridiculous when you think about it. But depending on the topic or depending on what it is, it's invariably reading around the subject to make sure that you're particularly kind of boned up on it or whatever. So it's a lot of work that goes into it. And I think I went through a phase where you inevitably still happens. It'll probably happen next week. You find yourself questioning, is it worth it? Is it really worth all that effort every week for the kind of the reward you get from it, whether that's financial or whether that's the kind of the kickback in terms of social media presence or whatever, any of that kind of boring stuff. But pretty much down to a T, every person who's made a successful go at YouTube or any of that kind of stuff, the one consistent bit of advice is just keep doing it. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and it will come. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And it's a relentlessness. I think it is a war of attrition to a certain extent. And having that was the first thing I noticed with it, was having that regularity, having that sense of continuation in terms of every Friday, 5 o'clock, Chris will be there talking nonsense again. It sets up, some expectation within people, which they know is going to happen every Friday. So I think that's key, having that regularity, but also just, yeah, like I said, the difficulty is sort of spurring yourself on every week to try and talk about something new, or try and find something to talk about a lot of the time, you know.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt the technology, but before I do that, I just want to say a couple of hellos. Oh, Jess Harrison is watching. Hi, Jess. Rebecca's in the house. Hi, Rebecca. She says, "Hi, Chris. Hope you're well."
Ah, cheers.
Thomas, don't worry. We're going to ask about the Strat. And hang on. We're getting some feedback here. Steve, Johannes, say that you're quite quiet.
Me. Okay.
Although Lee disagrees. Lee says, I can hear Chris fine, maybe because I'm just up the road. But
I'll move a little bit closer and
okay.
further away from Lee.
Talking about the Friday Fretworks, and also the one you did quite recently, which has proven to be, well, you can talk about it afterwards. But first of all, I'm just going to give a quick blast, so people know what I'm talking about. The drums, Right, I'm going to go for the fade. There we go. There's the fade. Okay. So for those of you who are relatively new to Chris's Friday Fretworks, last Friday you did John Lennon, and that was one of the examples. And I just wanted to say, by the way, that Neil James is in the house, and
Hey, Neil.
Hey Neil, your analysis of others' recordings and techniques are the best on YouTube. So
thank you, Neil. I wouldn't agree with that myself, but that's very kind of you. Thank you.
So just talk about how you went through the process of deciding that that's what you wanted to do, and also talk about the naughtiness, how you set that up, and also what the response has been.
My first dabble into the world of clickbait. So I did a video a couple of months ago where I looked at a John Lennon signature, I guess, in a loosest sense, tribute model, whatever. The Gibson did a number of years ago. They did a very limited run of Les Paul Juniors that he played in the kind of early 70s, you know, circa Elephant's Memory, all of his solo stuff. And I managed to get hold of one of those from a mate and do a video with it. Had a really good response. Turns out the Beatles are quite popular. Who knew? And had a good response to the video, but there seemed to be a genuine trend appearing in the comment section, which surprised me, along the lines of, well, clearly John was a hopeless guitarist, you know. And I mean, more often than not, it would be sort of a comment like that would be tempered by the fact, well, watching you has just made me realize that John was a terrible guitar player. And it's like, well, I mean, thank you for the compliment, but there's a lot to unpack there, you know. I think, take the success out of it, you know. Having you know, the clear success that the Beatles had, like I said, they seem to be relatively popular. Having been a Beatles fan all my life and having dug into the stuff a lot more closely, I guess, in recent weeks to make these videos, just honestly amazed me how good a guitar player he really is. You know, really just a very kind of shit hot rhythm player, for lack of a better thing. Just great right hand, you know, kind of odd chord shapes as well, because he learned to play banjo initially, so a lot of the chord shapes are a little bit more akin to what you would learn with the banjo. So there's all this stuff going on, coupled with the fact that a lot of what he was doing was quite ahead of his time. One of the examples I use in that is from a track from Hard Day's Night, which is very kind of Nile Rodgers-esque, you know, a good 12, 13 years before Nile Rodgers came to prominence. So just all of this stuff, which I thought would be worth a video, just to try and highlight the fact that, you know, as much as he's an easy target, I guess, because he's not around to defend himself.
Yeah, true.
And he wasn't the standout guitar player in the Beatles, I guess, in that it was invariably George who got all the solos and all the kind of big moments. I thought it was worth a video to just, I don't know, leap to his honor a little bit. But in doing so, I've attracted, like I said, it's my first sort of little foray into the world of clickbait to a certain extent. I didn't intentionally go full on clickbait, but I quoted a numerous amount of quotes in the thumbnail saying "terrible guitarist?" And then asked the question in the title of the video. Was John Lennon a good guitar player? And for the most part, the reaction's been amazing. Like you said, it's had 250,000 views in 4 days, so it's had a very good response. Clearly, I mean, I guess it's the law of averages in that the more people you reach, the more of those are going to be slightly psychotic, shall we say, to put it nicely, or just clearly read the title of the video and look at the thumbnail and then don't bother watching the video and very passionately and very sort of extensively let you know their displeasure with you. So, yeah, that's been interesting dealing with that, because I think, anyone who's ever had a video go quote unquote viral, I guess, to a certain degree, like I said, it's the law of averages. The more people that your video reaches, the more people who maybe aren't necessarily aware of you or aren't per se a fan of yours or whatever, so it opens you up to a new audience, which is a very good thing in the sense that, my subscribers have gone up 5,000 within the last week. So that's been good. But at the same time, I've been fending off lunatics who want to, kill me. So it's, yin and yang.
Comes with the territory.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Comes with the
let's have a look. Well, Neil James says I'm a bit distorted. It's my new guitar sound, Neil. That's all I can tell you. Emilio Masari from Cornerstone is watching. Hi, Emilio. How you doing? He says hello, Chris. Dr. Ben is in the house. Ben, hi Ben, how are you? It's been a little while. I say, ding dong. John Burgess is here. I learned a lot. Oh, Neil says I learned a lot about different rhythm chord shapes from it. All right, from the video, I would imagine.
Awesome.
So this is, I suppose, it breaks out into another question, which is how. Oh, Alan Salmon. Hey, Alan, how you doing? Sorry. Loads of people over here on my iPad. So what is a good guitar player? I mean, you touched on this with the whole concept of, John Lennon, and, I suppose we could talk all night about what is a good guitar player, but I mean, how do you sort of, what's the essence?
Well, this is what I tried to get to the kind of bottom of in the video, in that, like you said, it's incredibly subjective, which it entirely should be. That's the kind of beauty of music, I guess, is that, as I've said before, one man's meatloaf is another man's poison. It really is subjective. But what I wanted to do in that video was remove a level of that subjectivity, I guess, because whether you like the Beatles as a band or whether you rate John Lennon as a songwriter is entirely personal. It's entirely down to you. And I guess that will very much form your opinion on whether he's a good writer or not, So what I wanted to try and get to the bottom of in the video was the kind of technical prowess, I guess, displayed in the examples that I went through. So it's a little bit more, or at least so goes the plan, indisputable, I guess, then when you you use a couple of examples which just show how he was a very proficient, very good guitar player, in the sense of he knew his chords, he had great timing, he was moving around the neck, not looking whilst singing, whilst harmonizing, or whilst taking the lead vocals, all this kind of stuff, which I think gets kind of, it's a sort of bit of a contradiction in it, I guess, in that you can be as arguably one of the most 4 famous people ever to existed and still be possibly underrated to a certain degree. And I just wanted to kind of delve into that a little bit. But clearly, a lot more people were interested in it than I thought were going to be interested in it. But I mean, like we were saying earlier, you've only got, I mean, the like ratio, I guess, which is as good a kind of barometer of anything, is pretty strong. It's, I think, 98% approval rating from the people of YouTube. But then clearly within that 2%, then you get the people who very clearly want to let you know their displeasure with even the idea of questioning a Beatle. So,
okay. Well, actually, that's going to bring me on to something in a minute. But first of all, I just want to shout out to BB's watching, BB Westoram.
Cool.
Jamie Westoram actually has always been. I've always been a massive fan of Jamie's guitar playing. Jamie's in a band called The Fix.
Oh, cool! Yeah.
did huge things and still do great things in the States. And I discovered them as a result of a friend of mine went over, and he's always went over to the States, came back with their album, "Reach the Beach," which I listed. I did one of those,
Oh yeah, yeah.
oh, your top 10 albums, blah blah blah, that thing. And actually, I really enjoyed it. It gave me an opportunity to talk about a few things that I really liked. But "Reach the Beach" and Jamie's playing on that. If you haven't heard it, I recommend you go out and listen to it.
Awesome.
He was a massive influence on my playing, certainly at the time and even now. So, come on then, name your influences. Who are they?
Oh man. Well, I guess the obvious place to start is, and I noticed a question about this earlier. Someone came in saying, obviously I'm a Slash fan, but that doesn't necessarily show in my playing. Slash was, I've talked about it numerous times, I guess, but Slash was the first guy that I really honed in on as someone who's playing. I kind of, I don't know, resonated with me, I guess. It was the first for all of the influences that I gleaned from, primarily my old man's music collection, Clapton or the Beatles or the Stones or Dylan or whatever.
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses were the first band that I kind of really honed in on as my own discovery, I guess, and then as you do when you're 14, you set about trying to find like-minded people, whether it's in school or whether it's on Guns N' Roses forums or whatever, to, share your love of this band. So they were the first real big influence I had. But like I said, prior to that, Clapton was a big one. Clapton was the first ever gig I went to. I was sat in a different part of Birmingham to Clapton, but I saw Clapton. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, like Stevie Ray was a big one for a while. Hendrix, I was sort of sacrilegiously late to the Hendrix party, so to speak. I think it was weird. I had a similar experience with Hendrix as I did with Jimmy Page, in that I think I dug into the wrong places first, which I guess when you're 14, you're not necessarily over endowed with a sense of sticking power or, I don't know, yeah, willingness to persevere with stuff. And I dug into a couple of bootlegs, I think, and I was like, well, this is sloppy. Well, he's out of tune. This all sounds awful. Maybe I'll file that under the let's check that out later category. I think, and all those weird little idiosyncrasies have come to form the kind of linchpin of my love of Hendrix, since then. So Hendrix, I think, was a genius, not just in terms of guitar, but in terms of lyrics and melody, just unparalleled in so many ways. No one I've named thus far has been particularly revelatory, is it? I mean, in terms of more recently, I'm a huge fan of soul and soul singers. So I think Sam Cooke has probably got one of the greatest voices of all time. Otis Redding, all those guys, trying to kind of dig into their back catalogue and find little kind of, deep cuts and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, my music taste is fairly eclectic, I guess, while still being relatively centered around the thing of melody, groove, songs.
I tell you what, the funny thing is you mentioned Jimmy Page, and anybody who knows me will know that I'll forgive him almost anything. Almost.
Yeah, got a caveat though these days, haven't you?
Well, but the thing I learned about him over the years was when you listen to a lot of the old Zeppelin stuff in particular, is the way, I mean, I've had this conversation so many times on guitar breaks and what have you, is what is a good guitar sound? And a good guitar sound is one thing in your bedroom and another thing when you're recording or playing a piece of music. And
Absolutely.
Page is the absolute archetypal exponent, in my opinion, of this, because he'll have a guitar sound, which if you listen to it in its own right,
Yeah.
it's not a very good sound. There's one classic guitar sound, which I call the end of a drain pipe sound. And
Yeah.
it's one, he goes, and it sounds, I mean, but then the band comes in, and once the band comes in, it just sits so well that it's just a perfect opportunity for people to go, well, what really is a good guitar sound? So this takes
Absolutely.
this takes me into quite nicely. It's almost as if I'd rehearsed this. Takes me quite nicely into your equipment that you use. Now, I know you've been with a number of different brands over the years, but it seems to me like you've always been, you've always worked well with the people that you work with. And at the moment, I mean, I'm
It's like
thinking,
a school report. Works well with others.
yes, works well with others. Well done. Merit. So talk about how you've decided to work with the people. I mean, at the moment, we can see that you've got, we know for a fact that you've worked with Victory, great amp company, really good. I have to hold my hand up and say I also play Victory. But also you've got Yamaha. You've been with Yamaha for a long time, using the RevStar in particular, and they made you a custom one, right?
Yeah, they did this relic gold top here. I don't know whether that's
Can we
particularly.
can we just hear what that sounds like?
No, you've got to pay extra for that.
Oh, okay. Okay, everybody. 50p.
Stick a PayPal link down below. Let's have a look. Something like that.
Well, that's but the thing is, that's such a great sound, but in a way, it automatically makes me want to say the old adage: it's actually all in your fingers.
Well, no, if Yamaha are watching, it's all in the guitar.
Of course, they are.
Yeah, brands. Brands. To go back to the start of the question, I think a kind of strong, and I get a lot of questions. You mentioned it again earlier, the kind of whole endorsements thing. I think people get very kind of carried away with that notion because I guess to an outsider, the main thing that you would hone in on if you're talking about endorsements is, well, free gear, kind of how cool is that, and if you told me 14 years ago, whatever, that kind of, you get to a point where brands are kind of giving you stuff for free, I would have been like, brilliant, I'll take everything I can get. After how many years of paying for everything, as everyone does. But it's very much a kind of two-way deal, and nothing, it's a whole cliche, nothing is free, and any stuff that I do get gratis is very much as part of a transaction, a wider transaction in terms of, well, what can you offer us for this bit of gear, and so that sounds overly cynical, I guess, but that's one of the reasons that I've always been very careful of only working with brands who I know and trust and have a good relationship with. So you feel like you're on an even footing and you're not going to have the rug whipped out from under you and left in an embarrassing situation where you have to maybe use something that you don't like or you wouldn't otherwise endorse, So none of the brands that I work with pay me to play their gear. That's not how it works. I do certain events, obviously, where that is a part of it, but it's not like I'm on a retainer from any company in that respect. And like I said, it's all built on a kind of thing of trust, I guess, in that be sensible with it, be a good representative of the brand that you're representing rather at that particular time. That was the first thing which amazed me when I started working with Fender. The first thing I did with those guys was a clinic in Guitar in Glasgow. So they flew me up to the other end of the country. It was sold out. It was a great event and all this kind of stuff. And it dawned on me at some point that was literally the first thing they'd entrusted me to do. And suddenly I'm up on a stage talking to people, playing Fender with Fender banners everywhere. And I'm being entrusted to be a good representative of the brand. And that kind of blew my mind, to be honest. And still does, I guess, to a certain extent, in that you've got these huge companies who are sort of entrusting you to get up there, A, not make a total arse yourself, and B, not make a total arse of them as well. So if you put too much sort of thought into it, it's a relatively daunting prospect, I guess. But like I said, I've always made a point of only dealing with, only kind of working or dealing with companies who I know and I like and whose gear I use anyway, irrespective of whether, they're kind of giving it to me free or it's part of a kind of wider transaction, I guess. I learned my lesson relatively early on in, I guess, inevitably when you start getting to any level of profile, whether that's in terms of social media or whether that's in terms of live attendance at shows or whatever, as soon as you have a audience, brands look at that as an opportunity to use you, totally fairly as well. I guess that's kind of part of how it works. And I was so kind of flattered, I think, to start off with, that kind of, well, these people are offering to give me this free, and all I got to do is a video saying how much I like it. And then of course you end up with a product where you think, Oh, right, okay. I don't actually particularly like this, but well, I've kind of promised to do a video now. So you end up doing a video or you make some references to a product where you don't wholeheartedly believe in it. And then a week later, you get a message off someone who's a fan of yours saying, just bought this because of you. How do you set yours? I can't seem to get mine to sound any good. And I remember without
Yeah.
naming any kind of names or naming any kind of things, I remember that happening a very, very long time ago and scaring the bejeebus out of me because it's like, oh, right, okay, I'm actually in a position of some influence here. However big that is irrelative, really. I've influenced that person to buy a product. And if I like the product, that would be amazing. If you're a bit ambivalent about it, then suddenly you feel like a bit of an ass. So, yeah, that was the kind of real watershed moment for me in terms of, well, only work with people you like, only work with brands who you would ordinarily use anyway. So the Yamaha thing came about because I went into PMT in Cardiff just after the release of the Revstar. And one of the guys in there, I know them, it's a local shop for local people. And bumped into them. They were like, oh, try these new Yamahas. They're really cool. So I sat down and tried them, really liked them. So went away then, already had a kind of prior connection with Yamaha from a couple of years ago, dropped them an email, and the relationship kind of flourished from there. But that all came about because I'd gone into the shop and sat there for an hour being really impressed by this Revstar,
Mm.
and I think, yeah, I don't know. It's easy to be overly cynical about it, but I think a lot of the kind of relationships that you see other people having with companies are a little bit down on the level of, well, I'm just doing this because I get paid, or I'm just doing this because I want free stuff, and it's in my humble opinion anyway, it's not really the way to go about it. So
Okay, well, the thing is, I think one of the things you've been very gracious and come to a number of Guitar Breaks events over the years, and hopefully you'll come back and join us in the future.
absolutely.
But the reality of it is, from a third party perspective, watching, is whilst it's lovely to have all this great equipment, actually, I've watched you play some very bizarre stuff, and you still make it sound like you. Um,
Well, I guess I can only sound like me, I guess, which is
yeah,
both a good thing and a bad thing, I guess, on any given day. Um, it's again that all kind of plays into it, I guess, in the relationships I have with the brands, whether we're talking Yamaha or Fender or Victory or whatever. It's all done on a level where there's a kind of mutual understanding that it has to be relaxed to a certain degree,
yeah,
not only because of the restrictions of, I mean, for example, I use and I love Victory. That in particular is the Super Duchess. And any scenario where I can use that, I will use that. Inevitably, there's shows that we do where we fly in for one gig or fly in for a festival in Europe, and that's not entirely practical. You could try and track one down, but you're going to be a massive pain in the ass to a backline rental company, or you're going to be a pain in the ass to Victory or whoever the festival management. At which point, it's easier, considerably easier for me to use a Helix. Now, I use a Helix a lot. I've dug into the Helix to make
yeah,
sure that I can get the best out of it, and I know how to use it. And in that respect, I take my Helix preset on my MacBook, plug in the Helix that they have there waiting for them, as they invariably do, and we're hunky dory and we're good to go. So it's being flexible with it is a massive part of it, and knowing that the brands are cool with the fact that every now and then a situation where will arise where inevitably it's not the perfect scenario when you can't be dripping in sponsored bling.
yeah,
Um, at the same time, obviously the Friday Fretworks thing is a little bit of a caveat, I guess, for any companies, because in order to do that with any level of integrity or any level of kind of genuineness, I guess, I have to be free to play other stuff. So the John Lennon one, John Lennon plays Rickenbackers early on and moved to a casino later on. So I dug around and called a couple of mates and got hold of those two guitars for that. If I'm there playing it on a Revstar and a Strat, people will be like, well, what are you doing? So having that level of flexibility with the kind of companies that I do work with is essential. And yeah, I can't remember what the original question was now, but just
doesn't matter.
I waffle for a while.
It doesn't matter what the question was, the answer was great. So, okay, what I was going to do is I'm going to do some shout outs because while you were talking, a whole bunch of people turned up. So I'm just going to say hi to Bjorn. There's Neen Buck has turned up. That's,
Hi, Nan.
all right, Nan, how you doing?
My number one fan.
John Burgess, yeah, Mark Riley. Okay, well, actually, Mark, your question is sort of going to come up in a little while. I've got a whole bunch of questions from people who very kindly sent them in. Amadeo, am I saying that correctly? He asks, can you talk about the Yamaha guitars you have? Love the gold dot, but it doesn't seem to be available. Is it available? Yes.
This is a contentious one. Thanks to Pete and Lee and Andertons,
Okay.
they did a video from NAM where they cornered me, literally collared me in a corridor and introduced the guitar to the world as my new signature model, which would imply it's going to be available publicly. Now, I don't know what the ultimate plan is, I guess. It started off, I think, as Yamaha, as a bit of a thank you, I guess, for all the work I've done with the Rev Stars over the last couple of years. They phoned me up and said, look, what would you have in a perfect world? What would you like that we don't currently offer? And I said, well, the 502 is the one I use 90% of the time. The original one is out there now, but it's wrap over tailpiece with P90s, very a la 54, 55, another brand that we don't talk about. So I was like, well, cool, make me a gold top, make me a kind of custom shop version of that. So they set about it and they built me one in the US custom shop. I picked it up, when I went over to NAM and I was working with Yamaha over there. Picked it up. It's an absolutely amazing guitar. Again, this is the unfortunate side of being associated with any brands, is that rightly or wrongly, people distrust everything you say. Because, I think YouTube and the sponsored content and the paid promotions and all that kind of stuff has bred this this attitude of slight suspicion around stuff, which I think is good. Inherently, I think that's very good because you sort of don't get taken in by stuff quite so easily. So like I said, people tend to distrust anything I say about any product ever. But hands down, this is an absolutely phenomenal guitar, as is the normal one. The downside of this at present is this was a custom shop, a one-off for me, which is why it's not available, in shops or in wherever. But I'm sure if people badger Yamaha enough, then it may come to fruition at some point. So,
Okay. And there's the answer to your question. At the moment, no. Who else we got? Oh, Mehmet. Hi, Mehmet. Robin Burrows is watching.
awesome.
Robin, great guitar player. Oh, my lovely friend from Italy, Rhiannon, is watching. Hi, Rhiannon. Hope Roger's okay. Hope you guys are doing well. Sorry, personal plug there.
It's a good Italian name, Rhiannon.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Oh my God, my old friend James Dawson is watching. Now, I may dig this out, not tonight, but I may dig this out in the future. There's a photograph of me and James and our old drummer friend called Floyd.
Right.
And we're basically mime, but we're just pulling the worst rock and roll pose you possibly can. And it's about the oldest photograph I have of me pretending to play the guitar. So thank you for that, James. Who else we got? Martin Ekberg. Hi, everybody. Hi. Rob Cox is watching. Ernst Lark. He asks a question. Cheap substitute for the Cali 76.
Ooh, that's a good question. Do you know what? The problem is there that as soon as I found the Cali 76, I kind of stopped looking for compressors. So I've not really dug out any which I would use as a viable alternative, really. Not cheap alternative by any stretch of the imagination, but the Thorpe, oh man, I've gone blank. The Thorpe compressor, the
water?
Fat General, I think.
Is it? Okay.
Maybe.
All right.
Thorpe Fat General, if I can get my words out, is brilliant. And that's similar in that it has a blend kind of control as well. So you can blend in your clean tone, or the ratio of the clean and the compressed.
Okay, hang on a minute. If Adrian's watching if Adrian Thorpe's watching, then let us know what the name of it is. Or if anybody else knows what the name of it is, let us know in the comments, and I'll let you know anyway.
I think it is the Fat General, but I mean any compressor that has the capacity to blend, I think blend. That's where the Cali 76 is amazing. Is it doesn't totally kill your tone like a lot of compressors can. It's very subtle if it needs to be, or it's fairly kind of drastic if also it needs to be, So anything with a blend, dig into that and experiment with that, And I'm sure there's any number of million compressors out there all with blends. So
it's not a shameless play. Oh, hang on. Will Goodfellow says, and Christopher James both say, yep, Fat General.
Awesome.
But the one compressor that I have on my board pretty much all the time is the Cornerstone, the Zafiro, which
of course, yeah, that's brilliant as well.
Yeah,
I remember we using that out at in Italy at Guitar Breaks. So
yeah. It's a funny one because it's sort of I think they describe it as a compressor for people who don't really like compressors. And that's kind of and by the way, I don't know, BB, if you're still watching, but that again is something that I blame Jamie for, Jamie West Oram from all those years ago. That really clean, aggressive, compressed tone is something that I've always enjoyed. Right, now, hang on a minute. Who else has come in? Dave's in. Bjorn, I don't know. I'll ask him later. And right, we did get some questions, and one of these questions, the first one, I think is going to end up answering about three,
Right.
and it's quite long, so bear with me. It's from Tim Caulfield, and it says, in a post-lockdown world with a financial crisis escalating, all guitar manufacturers have gone out of business. Further still, with no new guitars being produced, the government of the day imposes a strict musical instrument tax and redistribution law. You are only allowed to keep one guitar, one amp, and one pedal. The rest will be given to sticky-fingered nursery school children to continue their musical education and no doubt get covered in crayon and orange juice. So, based on the conversation that we've just had about endorsements and about
Yeah,
the gear
thank you.
that you use, what guitar, amp, and pedal do you keep?
Do you know what? I'm wondering
That's a
whether that
good
is
question, by the way, Tim. That's a
fan-
good question.
fantastic. I'm wondering whether it is some sort of Orwellian dystopia or whether it is actually just likely to become a reality. We'll see, I guess.
Indeed.
But oh man, let's start with the amp. That one. And again,
That's the
distrusting of everything I say, quite rightly, the Super Duchess, the V140. Purely for the fact that, as I kind of tried to demonstrate earlier, it gets fairly gainy if you need it to. If you crank the volume and then kind of dial back the master volume if you're in the front room, it'll get fairly gainy. You can get kind of cool classic rock stuff out of it, but at the same time, it does clean for days. It's got an incredible amount of headroom, which is what I'm trying to achieve when I'm live. You know, if the less my amps can break up, the happier I am. You know, and the louder and the punchier and the more chesty they are, the happier I am. And that does that in spades. That's amazing. So that would be the amp. One pedal. It'd have to be an overdrive, and it would probably be the King of Tone. And how cliched is that? Given that's a bit of an unobtainium sort of pedal with a 3-year waiting list. But in lieu of the King of Tone, it would probably be the Marshall Bluesbreaker, this old one.
Yep.
From the 90s. That's an amazing pedal. I love that, and it doesn't massively boost your mid range or sort of cut off all your bass end as well, which is nice. And in regard to guitar, that's a very good question. It would probably be one with the most sentimental value. Really, I don't own any guitars which are absolute dogs because I wouldn't own them if they were. So it's not really a kind of a choice to whittling it down to one that is the best per se, so much as one that has the most sentimental value, I guess. And that would be a toss up between my first ever guitar, which was a Squier Affinity Telecaster. I dug that out again recently to do a video with it,
Wow.
and it amazed me how good it was. Really, you know, it's
Yep.
you know with the beauty of hindsight and all that kind of stuff, I was genuinely amazed at how good that felt still today. You know, and all these memories came flooding back of playing nonsense in school assemblies with that guitar. So it'd probably be that one or my Highway 1 Strat that I bought a couple of years ago. This was before I had anything to do with Fender. I wanted a guitar to develop. I was doing my signature Radio Shop pickups at the time. We were developing those.
Yeah. Shout out to the guys at Radio Shop, by the way.
Shout out Radio Shop. Yeah, so I didn't have any. I'm a bit of a Luddite in terms of if a guitar works, it works. I don't really want to be fiddling about with anything under the bonnet, so to speak, because anytime I do anything to any guitar, I make it incrementally worse.
Okay.
So if I try and adjust the intonation, the neck will be in half the next thing I know. So as a rule of thumb, I don't really touch anything. Subsequently, I didn't want to be taking the pickups out of any guitars that I own because they work and I like the way they sound. So I went on eBay and just found the first cheapest American Strat I could find, and that happened to be this Highway 1. And it's a really nice guitar. It's an amazing guitar, actually. But I think the main thing with that is, like I said, the sentimental value for having gone through the process of developing the pickups, and they are the final prototypes in there, which is still quite cool. and just, it's been with me everywhere ever since. Pretty much overnight became my main guitar, and it's been with me all around the bloody world. So Highway 1 Strat
Okay.
into that victory with the Marshall Blues Breaker in between. There we go.
Okay. Right. Well, that actually raises another question, which was originally sent in by Lee Needham. Hi, Lee.
Lee, how's it going, man?
And
How's the Chapman?
how's it Chapman, Lee? Yeah. Um, and Chris James has also just flagged it up. What's happening with the 62 Strat?
Ha! Right, the 62 Strat may or may not be getting picked up tomorrow. If you're from any sort of law enforcement watching, restricting my movement within the lockdown, I'm absolutely not getting it tomorrow. If you're a guitar aficionado who has no association with the South Wales Constabulary, I might be getting it tomorrow.
Okay. It's
pretty
being
much
delivered.
What's that? It's been delivered. Yeah, TNT. Parcel force. God forbid.
Yeah.
Is that libel? I don't know.
I don't know. It's all right. They're not. They're too busy delivering stuff, or not.
They're not watching. You said it. Yes, I'm getting it tomorrow. So to be honest, the only hold up with that was being the global pandemic that kicked in and stopped me getting my hands on it. And
Yeah. Okay. So basically, it's a question of kind of watch this space, wait to see what arrives before you decide whether you're going to change your mind or not.
There'll be a video about that in the next couple of weeks. Do you know what? I've been racking my brains today, actually, funnily enough, thinking about what angle I'm going to take with the video, because this is my dilemma. I was talking, name drop, ironically, need a horn for this. I was talking to Mick Taylor about it the other day from TPS, saying I feel weirdly undeserving of that guitar, not in a pity me, build my self-confidence up kind of way. I'm not so sort of, I don't know, self-effacing, but more in the way that I never particularly lusted after an old Strat. Old Les Pauls, absolutely. Lots of other old stuff, certain amps, certain pedals, totally. Get obsessed with it. Bizarrely, given I'm a Strat player through and through, really, an old pre-CBS Strat wasn't something that was on the bucket list. Primarily for the fact, I think, that having played a couple, they've always impressed me, but it's not been this kind of epiphany moment, I guess, where, all of the kind of the lights in the night sky illuminate and I'm there with the Holy Grail. I've never had that Spinal Tap moment. So in that respect, I still feel weirdly undeserving that I'm now the kind of custodian of this guitar. The good news is it's obviously been through the ringer. It's had a lot done to it at various points. So it's not going to win any booty prizes ever. And it's definitely not a case queen. So that kind of gives me carte blanche just to take it out, gig it, use it as a normal guitar. Yeah. So for anyone watching, not familiar with the story, I found it totally by chance. Thanks to Dave, actually. I don't know whether Dave is watching. Dave Thomas tagged me in a video that was a kind of quick whip around video of Pontypridd Auction House. Pontypridd, showing everything they had, Ponty Auctions. And Dave tagged me in the video saying, is this a Roland Space Echo? The old kind of green 501 or whatever it was, which he'd obviously picked up in this very pixelated video. I was like, bloody hell, I think it is, yeah. But more intriguingly, what's that old red Strat behind it? And like I said, the video was so pixelated, all I could make out really was the fact that the neck looked hellishly worn. So I was like, well, it's old. Either way, that's old. And the logo on it was pre-CBS. It wasn't the kind of transitional logo. It wasn't the bigger logo. It wasn't a big headstock. It was the old style kind of thing. So I thought, well, if nothing else, it's worth a punt. I'm 40 minutes away. Well, not even that. I'm 25 minutes away, I guess, from Pontypridd. And the auction happened to be in the morning following this discovery of this video. So I thought, right, I'll go over. So I went over with Hugh, the guy who's actually ended up doing all the restoration work on the Strat now, primarily because he's one of the few people I trusted not to try and outbid me. If I did end up bidding on it. And he confirmed he knows infinitely more about this stuff than I ever will. He confirmed exactly what it was. Someone else there obviously twigged what it was as well, because they asked for the neck to be removed. So it's got a July 62 stamp on the bottom of the neck. It has been refinished at some point. It was originally, we think, Fiesta Red. That's the only other trace of any color we found in it was Fiesta Red, which is particularly galling because obviously that's a custom color. So even if it was in diabolical nick, you could add another kind of digit to the end of its value, which is a bit of a shame. But the guy who owned it prior was obviously a Hank Marvin fan, given the rest of the stuff in the auction that wasn't shower curtains or old TVs, all alluded to the fact that he just tried
shower curtains.
I referenced this in the video. The lot before it was a set of bottle green shower curtains that sold for £3. So,
Wow.
and then it was a pre-CBS Strat. It's like, okay, this is slightly surreal.
That is.
So I ended up buying it. I bought it for £1,950, which,
Woo.
on a guitar that didn't work at the time, particularly, is rather obscene. But relative to its actual value, is a drop in the ocean, really. And I've spent about £1,000 on having it restored now. Kind of in some way brought back to its former glory. So I'm about £3,000 in on it, I guess, which is an obscene amount of money on a guitar. But like I said, that's slightly tempered by the fact that it's worth quite a bit more.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'd never lusted after one particularly. So given there are people who would quite happily sacrifice a testicle to spend half an hour with a pre-CBS Strat or 59 Les Paul or a whatever, any number of these guitars that I've been lucky enough to play, I feel weirdly undeserving because it was never particularly on the bucket list. So all I can do is try and do my best with it, really, and try and get some cool sounds out of it and feel like I've earned it in some way, shape, or form. So, so I'm going to be picking that up tomorrow, and there will be a video to follow very shortly in the next couple of weeks. So,
okay, there's a little bit of a to and froing going on the Facebook at the moment. So Will has said, because they asked about the 62, Chris said, what about the 62? Will says, I don't think he's picked it up yet. Weirdly spooky that he knows that. And then Danny says, what did Chris have for dinner, Will? Will says Welsh lamb. Anyway, my lovely old friend Simon Bell is watching. Hi Simon, how you doing? The voice of an angel. Johannes says, John Lauer said, how many denim shirts do you own?
More than I own Stratocasters, which is saying something.
Okay, and then Johannes says, are you bold enough to go full denim? Double denim?
The Canadian tuxedo? I don't think so. That's a look too strong even for I.
Okay, right. Now, I've got a couple of other questions I've got to ask you, but I would really like to hear you play. Have you got a Strat in there? I thought. Sorry.
Yes. Somewhere.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple of really quick questions that people sent in. Well, we already spoke about your first question about the restraining order, and the answer is yes. But then he says, and this is a quick one: how many guitars do you actually own?
Genuinely couldn't give you an answer on that one. I would have to do an inventory.
Okay.
Too many is the answer. I really need to sort of pare it down a little bit.
Ricardo has asked, what guitar pick do you usually use?
This is the official sponsored Guitar Breaks question, isn't it?
It is.
My chosen pick is invariably dictated by whatever is in my pocket, to be honest.
Okay.
But if perfect world, it would be one of these, which I'm trying to find one with the logo and writing still on it. Don't know whether you can see that. It's a Dunlop 1.14. Yep. Reason being, Slash played them. So there we go. Oh, cool. Yeah. What is that?
Do you know what? I've forgotten. And I don't know. Let me have a look. See if I can see what it says. It said, I think it's a Dunlop as well. Yeah, it's a Dunlop Prime something or other. Can't remember what it is now. But I ended up, unfortunately, as I've gotten older.
Next day delivery.
It's the guitar picks have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. So what I can, Pat's online. Hi Pat. What I'm going to recommend to everybody who can be bothered is to take a photograph of their guitar pick and see if they can stick it in the conversation that's going on the Facebook page. See how many guitar picks we can get in there before the end of this. Okay, right. More questions. Let's have a look. We've done Lee. Oh, Andy Guitar. Hi, Andy. Andy Crowley. He says, when did you last get your hair cut?
Funny you should ask. About a week ago.
About a week ago.
Yeah, and this is the sort of first time I've ever, or within very recent memory anyway, had anything like normal hair. So, I mean, it might not look like it. I can't see what I look like, to be honest. But yeah, it is now short. And
wow. Oh, my God.
Yeah. The problem is, haircut would probably be generous, to be honest. My wife had a crack at it. Okay. So, I mean, she's a scientist by profession, not hairdresser. So once I'm allowed out again, I might gonna actually have someone see to it who knows what they're doing. But fair play to her, she gave it a go and she did the worst of it anyway. So
Fair enough. Well, hopefully that answers your question, Andy. There we are. Right now, Chris has asked, and I think this will probably come in a little bit. I mean, it's a massive question in literally one sentence. So maybe if you could pull out the Strat, because there's a whole bunch of people who've been asking about your particular technique
Right. Okay.
that you have become, shall we say, famed for.
Yeah.
Um, but
It's all relative, mind, isn't it?
but Chris, well, absolutely. But Chris says, how did you develop your sound, your or tone? And he says very kindly, he says, right now you are the guitarist I am trying to emulate.
Well,
I
thank you.
presume he's talking about you, not me. So, but
um,
there's a very particular thing, isn't there? There's what we're all calling now the buck,
the
which
buck.
is that the sort of the slide, the bend, the slide. How would you
Yeah.
describe it?
This was rather than me kind of waffling on about it for too long on here, I did a video. If you go on Fender's Instagram, one of the most recent videos is all about this technique. I did a video explaining it for them. How I kind of stumbled across that. I mean, I've said it before, it is a cliche, I guess, but you only really find anything vaguely unique through trying to sound like other people and failing. Like I said, I can only sound like myself, unfortunately. As much as I tried desperately for a very long time to sound like Slash or sound like other people, I can only really sound like me. And in that respect, you stumble across odd little things and little idiosyncrasies and quirks which maybe are unique to you because you are you, I guess, ultimately. But yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I mean, the big one for me, and again, I've spoken about it a fair bit, was I went through a kind of phase where I was very religiously trying to emulate singers a little bit more, and turn this on a minute. This will be a bit better sort of thing. Let's have a look. Right, we got sound. Let me point that over there a minute. I guess what they're kind of referring to. I'm out of tune.
Yep.
Is that kind of like you said, the slidey bendy stuff?
The
I
slight
got
bendy stuff, yeah. I mean, I think the thing that really gets me, I mean, about it, above and beyond the fact that it's like you say, I mean, it's got a vocal quality to it. The thing
that's
about
what I
it
was
is,
kind of chasing. Yeah,
yeah, it's really precise. That's the thing. I mean,
that
I would say most guitar players spend most of their lives trying to get those bends absolutely on the money, and yet you
yeah.
seem to have managed to nail those down.
Well, thank you first and foremost. That, if that is the case, is just through practice. It's again, it's the boring answer, I guess, when anyone asks, "How do you do that?" I say, "Well, practice more." I play guitar most of the day. It's not ever something. I guess I'm very fortunate in that respect, in that as much as it is my job, I've never really considered it my job, and there's only been a very few moments where it does actually feel like a job. So in that respect, I'm constantly playing guitar because it's fun and I enjoy it. And whether I'm particularly conscious of it or not at the time, I am always practicing. This stuff I should practice more, and this stuff I should really try and get my head around, which I think would make me a better player. But when you play guitar as much as I do, whether it's videos, whether it's whatever, I'm always practicing in some respects. So, but like you said, if there is a precision to it, it's just through. I mean, a lot of that is getting to know the guitar that you're playing and being comfortable with the guitar that you are playing, because I mean, for this one example, this is a 7 1/4 radius, which are renowned as being a little bit more difficult to bend on. In essence, there's a kind of steeper gradient to the fretboard, so you are bending uphill. Whereas something like the Yamaha has got a 12-inch radius, so it's infinitely easier to bend on. But, I've been doing it long enough now, and I'm sort of been around the block a couple of times, I guess. So I know that if I bend up from the 12th fret, for example, and I want to hit this note, so I'm on my B string bending from the 12th fret, and I want to hit that note, 14th fret. So what I did there was pre-bend, so you don't have any indication of how far you have bent. That'll sort the men from the boys, because if you're underbending or you're overbending or you're wobbling free, you're gonna miss it. You're gonna fall short or kind of over egg the pudding. So, like I said, that bend there is that pitch near enough perfectly. If I wasn't so familiar with this guitar, you probably would have ended up with or something a little bit sharp or a little bit flat. So being
That's
familiar with
my
the
note of choice.
it's jazz, do it twice, it's jazz. Being familiar with the guitar that you play is a big part of it, and also just that is a cool little technique. Actually, again, I did a video for Premier Guitar recently, which is on their YouTube channel. Part of that is all about pick a run of notes. So pick this run of notes here, and instead of playing it like that, bend to them basically. So you're gonna work out the first note. If I'm bending from my 10th, is going to be a tone and a half. So you're going to be bending. There we go. Just about get it on a 7 1/4. Stepping down bends like that and trying to accurately pitch them will not only intonate your bends, but will intonate your ear as well, because you become a little bit more accustomed to what you are actually aiming for. Knowing what you're aiming for is half the battle. You hear some people bend and you think, did you have any intention of ending up anywhere in particular? Or is that just, kind of, I don't know, sort of exercise intention? So.
Yeah, so I mean, in essence, whatever happens, whenever you get those guys going, oh well, you're a natural talent. Oh, it's a good talent. No, it's 10,000 hours.
It's funny. I kind of never even considered that. I don't think. Like I said, guitar's the only thing I think I ever really enjoyed to the extent where I wanted to put 10,000 hours in without actively thinking about. Yeah. Well, that's 3 out of the way. Only 9,997 to go. So I've never even vaguely thought about it like that. But I guess you do pay your dues, you practice, and you put the work in. And it's not like a PlayStation game or something where you learn something and that unlocks the next level. It's a constant evolution, And I ask anyone, any guitarist in the world, whether they still think they're learning, and the answer should always be yes. You're always stumbling across stuff that you hadn't thought of before, or thinking about things in a slightly different way. Like you said, it's 10,000 hours that just all add up to you being hopefully semi-proficient on your instrument of choice. So
yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I'm just going to do a couple of shout outs. We are actually getting to the end of our time. I hope people don't mind. The time has just flown. Which is clearly a sign that it's great chatting with you.
Well, we're all just incredibly bored in lockdown.
We're all just
glad of a different face to look at.
Let's have a look. Dave Thomas. Hi, Dave. Dave, good to see you. Mehmet's on there. You create your sound by listening or by playing more? I would suggest probably that. You've just answered that question. Dave, Mark, Wales, what gauge strings do you like using, Chris?
Depends on the guitar. So on Yamahas, on Gibsons, or anything like that, 11s, 11 to, hang on. By Magic, Power Slinkies, 11 to 48. Okay. I thought they were slightly thicker than that on the bottom, actually. Yeah, 11, 14, 18, 28, 38, 48. Two Fat Ladies, 88. And then on Strat, or anything of that scale length, Ernie Ball Mega Slinkies. I don't know whether that's...
Are they 10s?
Or 10 and a halves. So you've got 10 and a half, 13 and a half, 17 and a half, and then they're just a little bit thicker than your normal 10s, 28, 38, 48. So they are actually the same on the kind of thicker side of things than... Okay. Oh, I'd never realised that. There we go. It's only the top few that are a little bit lighter. So, yeah, guitar dependent, but... To be honest, now is probably a funny time to ask. I'd probably be happier with 10s on everything, to be honest, because I'm not playing live. I'm not gigging as much as I would do ordinarily. So your fingers soften up a little bit. But ordinarily, when we're gigging or whether I'm whatever, the kind of thicker the better, really.
Okay, well, that answers Dave's question. It also answers John's question and someone else. I can't remember.
I don't know whether this is picking up through the microphone, but everyone in my street is now going mental for the NHS.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people clapping. Sorry, guys. Dave's saying, sorry, guys, got to go clap for those carers. That's absolutely fine, Dave. Everybody should be clapping for them. In fact, let's just take a moment, shall we?
People in my street have got pots and pans. So they're drowning me out.
I wasn't expecting to run over, but here we are. So everybody clap for the NHS and for carers around the world, because we've got people watching from all over the world. So... Absolutely. For people, carers, nurses, doctors, all over the world. Okay. Bob Richards says, oh, Hayden Mowbray's watching. Hi, Hayden.
Hayden, how's it going, man?
Yeah, and Bob Richards says, great Womble reference, Bucky.
Thank you, Bob. If
Um,
that was going to be appreciated by anyone, it would be Bob.
okay, well, Martin Perry says, hi from Bristol. Andy Bacon says, love you playing. How much do you practice acoustically, or do you make a
Oh,
point of always being plugged in?
oh no, man! I would drive myself mental if I was plugged in all the time. 90% of the stuff I do is unplugged. I mean, I'm plugged in a lot of the time, obviously when I'm filming. So whether that's the Helix, whether that's guitar rig, or whether it's the aux or stuff like that, primarily just for quote unquote work. But if I'm just playing for fun, unplugged, because I would drive myself and everyone else mental.
Okay, sorry, there's a little bit of it's starting to get taken over now. Tim's back. Tim's watching. Hi, Tim. How you doing?
Tim.
Adam Payne is watching. I have to do a shout out to my old buddy Adam Payne. The reason why things are looking a little clearer tonight on my side over here is because I've been desperately searching for a half decent webcam because the camera on the Mac's not great. And Adam very kindly used his Amazon Prime to pick me up this camera here, which I'm now using, which is making a massive difference. So Adam, thank you very much. You are a legend, and we shall be socially distancing tomorrow.
I know I've got to blame now anyway for seeing you in all your glorious high definition.
Yeah, well, I can blur it actually, but I won't do that now. Actually, my Antonella's come on. Antonella says,
Hey,
"Hi, Chris Buck." And William, thank you for that. I'm not going to say that, thank you, but absolutely, we should celebrate the fact that your wife is a carer. Okay, Chris, we are running out of time. We're running to the end of this. Before we go, it's become, over the last few that I've done of these, it's become a little bit of a thing. At the end, we do the quick fire round. So we're going to do the quick fire round now. It's 10 incisive questions with only one answer.
Right.
Sort of doesn't quite make sense.
Catchy title.
Each one has an answer. There isn't only one answer. Okay,
Right.
Are you ready? If you could only listen to one album for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh man. Appetite for Destruction.
Okay, Billy Gibbons or Jeff Beck?
I was listening to some early ZZ Top the other day, so purely on proximity, Billy Gibbons.
Boxing or wrestling?
Okay, but based on one being real, I'm gonna say boxing.
Okay, I think those of us who know you, we might know the answer to this question. However, you're going to form a rock tribute band. Would it be Zeppelin, AC/DC, or Guns N' Roses?
Yeah, probably a redundant question there. I'd love it. I'd love to don a top hat and a curly wig.
There's nothing stopping you from doing that.
Fair one.
Okay, have you ever milked anything?
What, in a sort of metaphorical sense or literal?
Up to you.
Up to me. Yes, in terms of not literally, but I'm sure I've milked. I've eaten out several times on the fact that I know Slash. So yeah, I've probably milked that.
You've milked that. Okay, fine. Quick, we're just going to stop and say, Steffi Beck. Hi, Steffi. Steffi's in from Canada. So
Awesome. Hey,
hi, hi, Steffi. Nice of you to join us. Okay, so you're going to say you have milked something, and I like the way you've angled that. Very good. Okay, next one. William Shatner or Patrick Stewart?
Oh man, that would involve having to watch Star Trek.
Not necessarily.
Well, okay, Patrick Stewart.
Okay. What's your favourite day of the week and why?
Oh, Friday. Because invariably it signals a gig of some description or something fun, and you've got the whole weekend. This is the thing, this is the irony. I don't know why I get excited for weekends, because my weekends are invariably busier than my week. But a weekend is still a weekend. So Friday.
Okay. Pasta or burger?
Oh, pasta. How cultured.
Very good. You
ram a
always
big
take
mic in
one
your
thing on tour, not musical gear. What is it?
oh, one of those fancy pillows you get in services, like the magic expanding ones that you sort
Okay.
of like squash down and then blow up. Because yeah, one of them.
Okay. And finally, for the quick fire round, what's one thing we don't know about you that we really should?
Yeah. If you don't know, it's probably a reason. I'm trying to think of like any hidden talents or anything not particularly um, musical. I'm pretty sure I've seen every episode of Dad's Army ever made, but that's not a hidden talent so much. It's just a bit of an obsession.
Oh,
Um,
that's okay. That's something we didn't know about you. So there we are. So
there
now
we
we know.
go. I think I was probably the only person under the age of 65 who was obsessed with As Time Goes By. Have you ever seen that? Judy Dench and Jeffrey Palmer, like a sitcom about a pair of old farts in essence, sort of
Chris
rekindling.
Palmer, wasn't he in Butterflies with
What's
Wendy
that?
Craig?
Probably, yeah. You'd know Jeffrey Palmer. He's
Somebody will know. I
somewhere
know
around.
Jeffrey. He's the one with the. Bub, 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 bub.
That's
He's
what's his
got
face,
that
Harry Redknapp.
Okay, final question before we go. Adam Payne's come in with a question, and I think it's relevant because we've talked about influences, we've talked about uh, you know the guys that have influenced you and what have you. But there is slowly but surely. Oh, hang on. Yeah, that's him. Yeah, that's him. Yep, I recognise him. Thank you.
Sorry, Adam, I'm cutting across. Go
That's
on.
right, no worries. But who's the best young guitar player that you're listening to or that you've discovered out there on the scene?
Oh man, that's a difficult one. This is the thing. Young is a lot like good in there, in that it seems to have infinite sort of parameters. I keep being called a young guitarist, and I'm going to be 30 next year, so I don't know when I cease to be young, really. Um,
Yeah, that's a good question.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, if I still can't grow a moustache, that is going to be sort of extendable in there. The young moniker. Good guitar players. Oh man, I don't know. That's a difficult one. I see. I'm waffling on now, but I feel sorry for young guitar players. I mean, it's sort of. I tell you what, Taz. Oh man, I've gone blank now. He plays D'Angelico models. Kid out in the States. Let's have a look. Brandon Taz Niedrower, I think his name is. Taz Niedrower is sort of what he's known as. Great guitar player. Stumbled across him a couple of weeks ago on Instagram. But I feel sorry for any kind of young kids playing, because social media can be such a sort of cruel place. You know, people are very sort of, I don't know, arseholes, I think, for want of a better thing. And I think if I'd been exposed to that at their age, and if social media
Yeah.
had been around when I was that young, I don't know whether I'd still be playing guitar, to be honest. So I think
Okay.
anyone young, quote unquote young, who's kind of giving it a crack and seems relatively impervious to the sort of the woes of social media has nothing but my sort of respect, really. So yeah, to pick out Taz though.
Okay, and just to add to that, Adam, I had to have a quick look, but I recently shared something on the Guitar Breaks Instagram. Is a young Italian guitar player who actually is working with Yamaha at the moment, playing a rev guitar, and his name's Matteo Mancuso, I believe.
Mancuso, yeah. He
I
had
mean,
one of these signature, lot of signature,
yeah,
adding no confusion, custom rev stars made recently. He's amazing. He's
honestly,
like watching ET.
that's the thing that really got me is once you realise that he's not using a pick, he's actually doing this.
It's like
I mean,
fusion kind of playing, isn't it? It's
just
mad.
absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy. So, okay, right. I think that's everybody. Oh, by the way, just to let you know that thanks Lee. Jeffrey Palmer was in Butterflies.
There we
So
go.
I think we can round things up and we can safely say we've got to the bottom of things this evening.
If Jeffrey Palmer's filmography isn't a particularly fitting note to end on, I don't know what is.
Well, I'm with you 100%. So anybody who doesn't know Jeffrey Palmer, go back, watch that body of work. But in the meantime, Chris, I want to say a massive thank you for spending a bit of time with us
Thank you
on
for having me, man.
Facebook here at Guitar Breaks. There's been some fantastic feedback as well from the guys. Hi Hans, hey Ben. Ben says thanks.
Pleasure.
So, it's been a real pleasure to chat again. It's been a little while. Let's try and catch up again. Oh goodness me, Taj Farrant, Australian, apparently.
No, not him. Taz. That's Taj. I
Oh,
met
that's Taj.
Taj out of Nam. He's a great little kid. He's a good guitar player as well.
So,
Taz Nidro, I think, is the guy I'm talking about. But yeah, I don't
let's
know.
have a look. That was from Sandy O'Sullivan. She said Taj Farrant.
Oh, hey, Sandy.
Sorry if I've got that wrong. Okay, so it's not Taj, it's Taz. I think we've got to draw a veil over this. Everybody's saying thank you to you, Chris. It's been great. It's been great fun. I'm going to cut the Facebook Live link now before I say anything else. And don't no. I thought we were going to get through the whole thing without this Wonder impression.
Nearly.
Okay, guys. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching.
Andy, thanks, Danny. I'm going to cut the link now and see you next time. Oh, next time, sorry, anybody's interested, I am currently negotiating with a hugely awkward guitar player who you rarely see him on the internet. So I'm currently heavily negotiating. My people are talking to his people, and if we can get through all the red tape, we might be able to get him out of his cave. And we're looking at Mr. Peter Honore. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, he doesn't often come out onto the internet. So if I can do that, it'll be a miracle. So watch this space. Announcements made once we've signed, sealed, and delivered. Chris, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, guys.
Cut the Facebook. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye.